Good afternoon. My name is Joseph Lloyd and I source cars for people on a professional basis. Although most of the cars I source are between £1,000 and £5,000, very often I've been asked to show something a little bit cheaper on the channel, and so I came up with No Budget Reviews, the series where we look at cars that you can buy in good condition with an MOT for under £1,000 and you can enjoy driving. We don't film this in an expensive manner, we don't use separate microphones, we don't use fluid head tripods, we don't even use a DSLR, but we do have a lot of fun. For quite a while now, I've always wanted to drive a P11 Primera. When I had my first job after university in 2005, one of my colleagues actually had one of these in this particular colour. Now it wasn't a 2 litre, it was just a 1.6, but it was the hatchback version of this P11 Primera. So this is a 1998 Nissan Primera 2 litre GX automatic. It's owned by Stuart, who has a very, very big collection of Datsuns and Nissans from the 70s through to the 90s. It was one of the later cars in his collection, and you can still pick up one of these cars for under £1,000. They don't tend to have so much of a classic interest now. This is a pre-facelift model, introduced I think in 1995. They also were sold in America as, I think it was called the Infinity G20. Those were sourced from Japanese production, but in this country anyway, the Primeras were built after the very early P10s that were built in Sunderland. So one thing I noticed straight away is the jazzy seat trim, which seems to be a common feature in a lot of cars of this era. It's only got 2 electric windows. I think you need to step up a couple of trim levels to get to niceties such as front fog lamps and rear electric windows and things like that. Just have air conditioning. There's the switchable automatic transmission. I don't tend to put handbrakes on in automatic cars. Park will do the same thing. Very kind of sort of straightforward and plain interior. Nothing particularly fancy, but quality seems absolutely fine to me. Let's just see what the rear space is like in one of these. Oh, it's pretty good actually. I'm only 5'11", so I'm not particularly tall, but headroom seems alright actually. Knee room is pretty good. You can put your feet on either seats. I think there's an ashtray here, there is. Wouldn't be the 90s without one of those. Don't get a fold down rear armrest, maybe you had to step up a trim level to get that sort of thing. But it's pretty comfortable. Now the seats are on the firm side, but not uncomfortable seats. And if you were to go on a longer journey, I'm sure the support would be very welcome. It's just on shorter journeys, they're not very soft, squidgy seats like I don't know, like something like a Renault Laguna or something that would have those. Just a one airbag. I think you just step up a trim level to get more. Everything is just very, very plain. There's nothing extraordinary about this. One of the criticisms of this car when it came out was everything was really, really dull, and I don't think the car looks any more dull than anything else really of this era. It's just there's not much in the way of kind of individuality to this particularly, which is why they brought up the facelift in 99 to sort of address some of those concerns, but the car just looked like it hadn't really even been styled by anybody, which is a little bit unfair. Possibly the QX, which was another contemporary Nissan to this, was more kind of that sort of school where it just had not folded paper exactly, but it just hadn't really got any kind of individual touches to it, which was possibly not the best thing for standing out in a corporate car park. Whereas this, I think, it just looks sort of pleasant and unfussy. I don't think it was nothing ugly or anything like that. I just think compared with some of the other designs, it just sort of just blends in, which maybe is what you want. I mean, the Vectra, I think, possibly was one of the ones also that was criticised for that, apart from the door mirrors. I don't know, I prefer the design of this to the Vectra. I can't explain why, but I just do. let's just see in here whether I can get my secret mission documents into the glove box. I've adjusted the lumbar support on the seat, and it is still a little bit on the firm side. It's not uncomfortable or anything. Right, we might not be able to tell because we've got a lot of exciting things in here. Stereo's been switched out. Would have had a cassette player originally. No front fog lamps. I think the switch that would have been possibly there. Sorry about the rays of light coming in. 113,000 miles on this car. To be honest, it doesn't feel like it. There's not much wear on the seats or anything. Like a lot of the cars that Stuart has, it's in really, really nice condition. No warning lights or anything like that. A typical Japanese custom of putting the headlight switch on here, which is absolutely fine. It's the same as my Rover is. And then the rotary dials that European tastes of the era tended to prefer. Another ashtray down here. A cigarette lighter or 12-volt socket. There's the little switch for the automatic transmission. I put that in sport now, so that will be exciting. Stuart says drive it in sport, so we will. Cup holders, and what's that for? Credit cards, I presume. Maybe you can lift that bit out, or is it stuck there? Looks like it. Oh, there's an instruction here to change it, but I don't remember to break that. Do we have illuminated vanity mirrors? No, we always got this sort of typical custom of the time of not giving the vanity mirror to the driver because, you know, they thought that ladies wouldn't drive these cars, which is really silly. I'm sure plenty of ladies did drive these. One of the interesting things about this car is clearly over the P10s, they've made some changes like this push button for the boot release, which I think is far more in line with European tastes at the time. Quite a big boot. It's maybe the same size as a Vauxhall Vectra B or something like that, which doesn't really compare very well in this car in terms of the ride and handling. Ride and handling of this is much better, but it actually folds in that for the boot carpet, so you can have a look at this nice full-size spare wheel. Do like a nice full-size spare wheel on this channel, viewers. What's in this side pocket here? Oh, gosh, that's yes, there's the jack. Good. It was worth me pulling that off. Let's put that back. There we go. And the first aid kit in there too. Wonderful. So there we go, Nissan Europe NV, so Sunderland built car, and certain bits of it, like that one, made in England. So SR20 engine, in this case developing around 130 horsepower. ABS, well, very grateful for that possibly. I think these engines do suffer from cam cover gasket leaks, like a lot of Japanese and European engines of this era. Oil weeps out of a cam cover gasket, but because this is one of Stuart's cars, it's looking really, really nice. It's a very, very good engine bay in here. He's spent a long time making his cars look good, and this certainly does. The paint is actually a slightly brighter shade of green, but it looks on video. But that's not really a bad thing. It is a nice colour. I love the colour of this car. It's just a shame that more manufacturers don't make dark green cars anymore, but they're just not fashionable for some reason. Right, time to go for a drive, which I understand is one of the best things about one of these P11 Primeras. What a joyous moment, viewers. Get to have a go in a P11 Primera. And yes, before you say anything, I know Ian Seabrook of the Hub Nut channel used to have one of these, and it was a 2 litre. Yes, I know, you don't have to tell me, because people are often telling me that sort of stuff when Ian Seabrook's had a particular car. I know, I'm a very big fan of his, like most of you are. So this has the SR20 engine in it, the automatic gearbox, and this particular car produces around 130 horsepower. Certainly with you know, these little roads that I'm on, it doesn't feel in any way kind of challenged. There were other engines available as well. Initially, just 1.6 and 2 litre engines. The 1.6 developed about 100 horsepower initially, and then after the facelift that came in about 99, they powered that down to about 90 horsepower. I think it was actually a different 1.6 engine from what I remember. With a 1.8 that only came in 99, and it developed around 118 horsepower. I think it was sort of half replacing this engine. This engine though did continue with that facelift, but before that it had two outputs, 130 horsepower and I think 148 horsepower was to the GT version. After the facelift, there was only one version of this engine available that was 140 horsepower, I believe. There are also some diesels in the lineup, but as usual, we don't talk about diesels on this channel. So Stuart drives this car in the sport mode on the gearbox all the time. I'm just in the normal mode, and just coming out of the junction just then, it spun the tyres. So, you know, goodness knows what this is like in sport. Let's actually use this little switch, which is around here somewhere, and put it into there. I'll have to do that when I'm not actually driving, I think, because it's impossible to see. But we'll go in the next part. We will see what it's like. The handling, oh my goodness me, it's going to be very, very good. It's a really, really good chassis on this. Really, really responsive steering. Right, it's a little bit firm for a car of this era, but oh my gosh, the handling is superb. Hydraulic power steering in this car, no electric steering setup or anything like that. Extremely good. I've heard these cars are surprisingly nice to drive, and yeah, I would agree. Let's go to run this roundabout and see what happens. Oh, that's good. Nice and flat and controlled. A little bit firm over that bump there, but yeah, the steering is really, really communicative. I know the chassis engineers on this car worked really well. Worked really hard to get an excellent ride and handling balance, and maybe a little bit too sporty for possibly some people, but I quite like this. I like it a lot. I remember driving the P10 Primera that Mr. Coleman, rubbish mechanic, owned in 2019, and that felt similar to this. I think this is a bit more refined possibly than a P10, but you can tell that this is a product of the same chassis engineering team. Right, I think we're going to switch the camera view round and keep enjoying our little drive. Yes, viewers, I'm afraid the mount is in the way. I'm afraid that's just the way it goes on No Budget Reviews. So, got in sport mode. I was almost right where it is just by the handbrake, this little switch for changing the mode to the gearbox. There is a normal and a winter and a sport. Oh wow! Oh, I can feel the difference in ratios straight away with this. I would personally not put it in this mode all the time because it feels a little bit nervous. But certainly getting out of junctions in this, absolutely no problem whatsoever. No problem at all. We'll go roundabout slightly again and get onto that faster road, and we will see what happens. I have a feeling it will be most agreeable, viewers. Most agreeable indeed. Oh, it's bright today. Right. Okay, off we go. Oh! Oh! Yes, unlike the Hubnut channel, we do tend to drive quite moderately on No Budget Reviews, but nevertheless, something like this, it's kind of hard to not exploit this amazing chassis. fantastic, really good. This SR20 engine was used in things like the Nissan Silvia at the time as well, so nice, well-proven engine. I think there were turbo versions of this available too in some other cars, not in this P11 Primera unfortunately, but I'm sure people have maybe swapped the engines between them or taken the turbos off and put those on some Silvias or something. Yes. Yes, please, viewers. I am having a very, very fun time. Who would have thought that a car which just looks kind of just fairly ordinary actually drives as well as this does? It's really, really good. You can feel the steering really, really well. It does have, I think, a torsion bar at the back rather than all independent rear suspension, so independent rear, but someone like Mr. Coleman, a rubbish mechanic, would be able to tell the difference between those. I mean, I just think this car is really nice to drive and handles really well. Maybe the P10's a little bit sharper, but this is good. I can understand why Ian Seabrook enjoyed driving his one so much, and why Stuart likes driving this one too. Let's go park up again and just draw some conclusions about this amazing car. So viewers, let's have a look at some trim levels for the P11 Primera whilst I consult my secret mission documents. Yes, quite a few for some reason. So the ones that were pre-facelift were Equation, Precision, Profile, SE, SI, SLX, SX, GT, GTLE, GTSE, GX and SRI. This is the GX. The GT had the more powerful version of the engine, about 148 horsepower. After the facelift in 1999, there wasn't really a very sporty model left. There was, well, it says for Sport Plus, but they only had 140 brake horsepower engine, and the 130 brake horsepower version of this engine was discontinued. It was the E, the S, the Sport, the SE, the Sport Plus, the Active, and the SE Plus. So viewers, should you consider a P11 Nissan Primera with your hard-earned budget up to £1,000? Well, I don't see why not. The boot is very big on this on this car. Actually, it seems bigger than a lot of others that I've seen. You could get, I think, a saloon version of this as well, from what I remember. I do like the way this car drives. It is a little bit firmer than some of the cars in this era. Laguna is softer than this, for example. But the way this car handles and steers is really, really good. I don't know if it's better than the Mondeo of this era. I've not tried a Mark 1 and Mark 2 Mondeo, so I couldn't actually tell you. But certainly with the P10 Primera, that was the benchmark for ride and handling that Ford used when they were in the final stages of developing the Mark 1 Mondeo, and this seems quite similar to a P10 in a way it drives. I have driven a P10 and I really liked it. Really nice and easy. Even though that car had a carburetor engine and no rev counter, this has a rev counter and it has fuel injection, which is good, and it's considerably faster than that P10 was. But yes, I quite like it. I maybe go for a facelifted one because it has a slightly nicer dashboard. I don't know about the look of it. Possibly it gives it a bit more of a distinctive flavour. That is up for debate perhaps, but yes, I quite like it. I certainly think that this is worth consideration. Just make sure if your engine in your P11 has a cam belt, make sure that's been done, and also check for rust. Rust is the enemy of a lot of P10 and P11 Primeras, unfortunately. But thank you ever so much indeed for watching this episode of No Budget Reviews. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video and leave a comment below. And see you again soon for more inexpensive motoring.